Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Christ is in our midst.
He is and ever shall be.
When we hear the story of the prodigal son, of course, all of us identify with the prodigal son. Yes, I'm making huge assumptions. I'm taking my own experience and transferring it to all of the parish and all of Orthodoxy. However, I believe that to be the case. It seems obvious that that's the target. But then again, it only seems obvious that way to me because I'm like the prodigal son. I'm not like the good son who's been in the field all day and doesn't know what's going on with all the merrymaking. I myself have never been in the field all day. Except for when I was in the army. And then I didn't want to be. I was just ordered to be, and it wasn't through any sense of filial piety or anything. Just went out and had a bad attitude about it. But then again, also, the older son has a bad attitude about it. He too doesn't understand what he has. He takes what he has. He doesn't even take what he has for granted. He finds a reason to complain where no reason exists. One gets the impression from his father's answer when he says, "Thou never gavest me a kid that I might make merry with my friends." You get the impression that he never actually asked. Which is interesting. He assumed, both sons seem to have assumed their place as that of a servant. They couldn't even see that, neither one of them could see what they had in their father. And neither one of them, well, we don't know about the attitude of the prodigal towards the other brother. But we know he didn't want to stick around. And we know of the other son that who knows why he was sticking around. It almost seems as though he wishes he could have gone off like his brother and done whatever he wanted in riotous living and harlots. So he had a very low kind of obedience. And so maybe there are those of us who identify more with the more faithful son, the obedient one. Although we don't actually know that the prodigal was disobedient. We just know that he wanted to get his money and go. And he wanted to do what he wanted to do. And he was bold enough to ask, which the other son was not. Because we know from his bitterness that he also would have liked to have gotten away with what his brother got away with. So really there's a lot of lessons to go around for all of the brothers. And we also can learn, we can see in at least I can see myself in the quality that we do all these things. We want what's ours, our rights, and we want to go and do what we want to do, and devour our living, and wake up with the pigs, and eat the husks. And we want to, or maybe we are like the other brother. We want to work hard, and we want to, and we sit around wondering when is our reward going to come. When the truth for the prodigal is he could have come back at any time, and he would have been received with great joy. That he thought he was not worthy to be his father's son, that he would go and be hired on as a servant. Shows that he didn't know his father very well. And the same is true of the other brother, that he, it was apparently it blew his mind when his father said, "You're with me all the time and everything I have is yours." It never occurred to him to ask for his own party, just to make merry with his friends. And it just seems to me to be a through line with us today, is that we know why we're here, we know whose house we're in, we know that we're all brothers and sisters and that we're supposed to love each other and everything, and we know that we're doing it because we're called Christians and we worship Jesus Christ and we venerate his saints and everything, and yet we find it so difficult just to ask for the things that we would like. We find it so difficult just to turn around and repent. And we're so forgetful of the mercy and the depths, the abyss of mercy waiting for us. And as far as the east is from the west, so far hath he removed our iniquities from us. It couldn't be far. Conceptually, it couldn't be farther. We're the treasures that are, and we're with him here, and they're available now. They're with us today. We take part in them all the time. This is the kingdom. We're in it, and it's only going to get better. But the lies of the demons and the myopic wisdom of the world tells us just about the opposite of that. It's not that the wisdom of the world is entirely false, it's that it's myopic, it's that it's one-dimensional, at best two-dimensional. It doesn't, as wise as the ancients were in whatever context you want to talk about, whether it's Sun Tzu or Lao Tzu or whoever, Socrates, we haven't actually improved on any of the insights that they arrived at without the help of God or without the direct help of knowledge of Jesus Christ. Obviously, they all had planted within them the truth of God, because they're made in his image, as we are. But mankind can't improve himself by himself. We can make more interesting things, we can even gain 10 times greater knowledge, but we can't. The condition of mankind is not improved except by Jesus Christ, except by knowledge of him. And that's true both in my own individual spirit, and it's also true in the history of mankind.
Yes.
But it requires that we just open our eyes. That both of these sons had their eyes in the dirt. And both of them refused to see what was right in front of them, what was available to them immediately. It's if the prodigal had not taken the goods appointed to him, how much greater could the celebrating have been? How much more fulfilling? But then again, this is a parable told for us who are fallen, and it's describing our condition. And so it's of course it's true that, that we shouldn't have rebelled, that we shouldn't have said, give me what's mine and I'm going to do what I want with it. And yet, another thing that avoids our notice all the time is that God said, okay, here you go, enjoy. And then, but was always on the lookout. Always on the lookout. His way, by the way, is seen throughout the Scripture, which is that he interrupts people in the middle of their slightly erroneous thought. Erroneous, but well meant thought. He interrupted Peter during the Transfiguration. He interrupted also the prodigal son today. He was just going over in his head. Okay. What am I going to say? Maybe I'll just dress up as a servant, or how am I going to make this work? And before he knows it, there's arms around his neck, and his father is falling on him, it says, and kissing him. And the other son also had his eyes in the dirt. It says he was out in the field. He's coming in, and I sort of get his Field of Dreams-ish image just of him kind of walking through the whatever. Maybe it wasn't tall. Maybe that's silly, but that's just the way I see it. And he's walking around, and he's walking, and he hears something from the house. What's going on? But he's almost rehearsing his bitterness. What's all this celebrating going on? What's that all about? He doesn't go in to find out himself. It says, servant, go and tell me what this celebrating is about. Oh, your brother's come back. And then he stands out in the hallway. One of my good friends when I was younger did something similar. He was having a bad day at, I think it was my birthday party or some gathering, and he stood outside in the hallway with his head leaned against the wall. And so that's just, and I've done similar things. I mean, I just, in mind at least, in heart, if I have too much pride to do it physically. So I just get all passive-aggressive and angry and kind of snappy at people. Anyway. But again, the Father comes out to him. Anyhow. The thing about giving a sermon about these parables, whether it's the publican and Pharisee or the prodigal son, is that they really, it's a little absurd because they really are quite clear. They tell themselves, but it's good to reflect on these things. It's good to go over them again and again because we're very forgetful. We're willfully forgetful, which is really the point of the story. One of the many points of the prodigal son parable is how we are so bad at remembering all the things we've seen with our own eyes, the glory that we've seen, and the mercy that we know is there for us. We convince ourselves that we're just not good enough for it. We're too bad. I know everyone says they're the chief of sinners, but I'm really the chief of sinners. Well, look, St. Paul's not a liar, and he said that of himself, and so we it's the most rational thing to say, because it's the only thing you can't be sure of anything else, and you cover your bases by saying that. But even if it's absolutely true, even if it's objectively true, there would be no way for you to be sure of it. But even if it was objectively true, salvation is for you most of all. That's why we have the prodigal son to look at as an example, not in his riotous living, but in his in the total forgiveness and complete goodness, the shower of good things that is awaiting him when he's only only just glimpsing his old house, glimpsing his father's house from the distance. So, I can't remember the exact words of the Christmas carol that talks about this theme, but in any case, it's impossible to know because we've only ever known the fallen condition. But the mercy of God is such in this condition, His glory is such in this present state where we can see Him running out to us and deal with all of the feelings and things that come along with that, knowing that I'm the chief of sinners, knowing that I've slept with the pigs. One would almost say that the fall was worth it. I'm paraphrasing.